Candace Owens, formerly known as Red Pill Black on YouTube, is undoubtedly a rising star in the conservative movement. I think she's probably one of the most prominent names now in American conservatism. So she recently appeared on Joe Rogan's podcast, and they were getting along just fine until the issue of climate change came up, and she said something so utterly ridiculous that Joe Rogan couldn't not call her out for her bullshit. Take a look.
I fell victim to the idea that, like, it was progress. We have to care about the environment. It was progress. And it's like, no, like, we've been losing. America has been losing. And Donald Trump understood that in a way that I didn't. And
I don't think we have to care about the environment? Like,
no, not even a little bit. Like,
not even a little bit?
No. Okay, let me clarify this. I don't throw trash on the ground. Like, okay. I'm not saying, like, we need to, like, trash the environment. Like, but do I believe in climate change? No.
You don't believe in climate change?
Well, I think the climate always changes, I guess is what I should say. Do I believe that this is like, an issue that is being, that is global warming, which they've changed conveniently. They got rid of the word once scientists started disproving it. Now they only say climate change. No, I think that was just a way to extract dollars from Americans. I don't at all believe. They had no actionable plan. It was great for Trump to get out of that deal. It was terrible.
Okay, but this is an incredibly complicated subject.
Right.
And if you would have to talk to a bunch of different scientists and see how they gather data and see what they understand about CO2 levels and what's the danger of them and what can combat it and what could not. Have you done all this, or do you take this flippant opinion based on the party line?
This wouldn't be the hill I died on, right? But it's not about the party. I just genuinely, I've read a ton about it, but I would not be able to come to you and say, like, this is my strong opinion. But here's, like, the easiest way to say this, right?
Okay.
The fact that there is a disparity in the science community about whether or not it's real is enough to.
It's very little.
Yep.
Very little disparity. Most scientists, the vast majority, agree that human beings are negatively affecting climate change.
Yeah.
The vast majority.
Yeah, I just don't think so.
In 2014, the vast majority, 87% of scientists, said that human activity is driving global warming, yet only half the American public ascribe to that view. So,
well, what website is
87%, and this is
Scientific American.
Yeah.
Yeah, .com though, like, 'cause that means it's making money. I don't trust that. If it was a .org, I would probably take that. But this is just a random website, and I don't trust.
Scientific American is not necessarily a random website.
Yeah, I don't believe this, like, at all. Just so you know.
You don't believe it, like, at all?
I genuinely don't believe it. I know you do, but I genuinely don't believe it.
I believe most of the time the consensus of scientists that are studying the data.
Right.
Global warming, climate change is definitely real. It's happening.
Well,
the question
but it's
is why
always
it
happened.
Yes, it has always happened.
So what is the climate change? Yes, the climate changes. It was different weather yesterday than it was today. Again, I didn't do a deep dive on all of this because I read about it because it was at a forefront of a discussion. So I read about it all night. And my conclusion was that they started pulling up all of these studies from the person that, did this that I did a deep dive on. And they started showing how, like, these community of scientists were in fact somewhere behind that .org or someone that was being funded. So to me, the issue got too politicized for me to believe that global warming was something that was going to wipe out the world. Now,
scientists get funded. That is a fact.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that the funding affects the scientific research and the data, which they all agree on. And this is universally across the entire planet.
Yeah.
Thousands and thousands of scientists would not stake their reputation on false data.
So there's a lot that I want to say about that clip. The full clip was actually 20 minutes, so I will link to that down below in the description box so you can see the whole thing. But for the most part, I kind of isolated the parts of that I really wanted to address specifically. So she starts off by saying that she doesn't think we have to care about the environment, not even a little bit, because America has been losing. That means absolutely nothing. To say that America is winning or losing is an empty platitude that Donald Trump likes to say that really doesn't mean anything. It's so vague and empty and amorphous that his supporters can kind of fill in the blanks and apply meaning to it themselves. But in actuality, when Donald Trump says it, it really has no meaning at all. So to say that we don't have to care about the environment, quote, not even a little bit because America has been losing, doesn't make sense. You're not saying anything meaningful, Candace. She also states, quote, it's an issue that global warming, which they changed conveniently, they got rid of the word once scientists started disproving it, now they only say climate change. Well, that's because global warming is kind of a misnomer. Even though it's true that the climate is warming overall, the term global warming kind of implies that the only consequence of global warming will be warmer weather, when in actuality that's not really true. It will cause the entire climate to change, and that includes more volatility in weather, more extreme weather patterns, ocean acidification, desertification. I mean, there's a lot that will result in increased temperatures, not just warmer weather. So the reason why that term was changed, justifiably so, I think, is because climate change is it's more accurate. As a result of increasing temperatures, the entire climate is changing. So, I mean, that's such a disingenuous point that I always hear conservatives make. Now, another thing that kind of struck me is Joe Rogan pulled up a source from Scientific American, and she said that she doesn't trust them because they're a .com. But if they were a .org, then she probably would trust it. I mean, what kind of logic is this? That's such a weird thing to say. A website is only legitimate if it's a .org. So does that mean that you never get your facts and information and news from any .coms, including Breitbart, WorldNet Daily, The Drudge Report? She also states, I don't believe this, at all, just so you know. I genuinely don't believe it. So she is simply against climate change because she doesn't, quote, believe it. But Candace, maybe you haven't heard what your boss, Charlie Kirk, said about beliefs, but he states, quote, liberals have feelings and emotion. Conservatives have logic, history, perspective, science, reason, facts, math, principles, ethics, values, dialogue, and common sense. So, Candace, according to your own boss, it's us liberals that only have feelings and emotion. Fuck what we believe, right? You guys, conservatives, have science. So shouldn't you put your beliefs, which is part of your feelings and emotions, aside and go with what the science says, since conservatives are the ones with science on their side? That's what your own boss, Charlie Kirk, said. What happened to that? She also says here, does the climate change? Yes, the climate changes. It was different weather yesterday than it was today. Now, this is probably one of the most absurd talking points from conservatives because it shows just how ignorant they really are. They don't know. Candace is implicitly admitting here that she has no idea that there's actually a difference between climate and weather. Climate is not the same thing as weather. Climate describes the long-term average weather patterns over time, usually decades, whereas weather describes short-term behavior. She also doesn't believe in climate change because someone who did a study alleges that they started pulling up all these studies and they started showing how this community of scientists were somewhere behind that .org or someone that was being funded. So to me, the issue of global warming is too politicized. Let's take a moment and try to digest her claim here, because then you realize just how idiotic it is. She's alleging here that because scientists receive grants to study climate change, those grants supposedly bias the results of those studies. She has nothing to say about fossil fuel companies spending millions of dollars every single year lobbying Congress against policies that would combat climate change because that would hurt their profit margin. That's not the real conspiracy to her, though. The problem in her view is that these scientists who are so biased sometimes receive grants to do studies. I mean, it's completely nonsensical. Her logic here, there's no logic to what she's saying. And ask yourself this, Candace, if climate change is a hoax, why do conservatives keep moving the goalpost? At first, they just denied that the climate was warming at all. But then eventually, the evidence became so irrefutable that they couldn't deny that the planet was warming. So then they moved the goalpost to say, well, it's warming, but humans aren't causing it. So they still deny climate change, but they deny anthropogenic climate change, which means that humans are the ones that are exacerbating climate change, which is really at the crux of the issue here. Because if human beings are the ones who are speeding up climate change, then we can do something about it. So overall, their goal is to get us to not act with regard to climate change. And when you look at just facts, Earth just passed its 400th warmer than average month. How can you hear about that and deny the reality of climate change? There are coastal cities around the world like Rotterdam who are working on solutions as we speak. And more extreme weather conditions are becoming more common, which is exactly what scientists stated would happen. I mean, at this point, to deny climate change is to deny common sense. Humans are obviously causing it. When you look at CO2 levels since industrialization, humans have increased the amount of CO2 that we are pumping into the atmosphere bigly. And CO2 is a greenhouse gas that warms the planet. So if you pump lots of CO2 into the atmosphere, well, put two and two together, you realize that we are obviously warming the planet. But the thing about conservatives is that no matter how much facts or studies you cite, they can never be convinced on this issue. Nothing you say can convince them. They will continue to toe the party line no matter what. However, when it comes to issues like God, well, you don't need facts. You don't need studies. All you need is faith. And these are the people that claim that they've been red-pilled. People who deny reality. People who buy into organized religion. They're the ones who are claiming to be red-pilled. And all of us, we're just brainless drones. I mean, I don't think they realize how foolish they look. So Candace Owens, she's not a free thinker. She's a Republican Party hack. She's a blue pill hack, and she's towing the Republican Party line. If they deny climate change, she denies climate change. If they decide that all of a sudden, well, you know what, we want to be the party that actually fights against climate change, she would flip like that, because these are what conservatives do. They're all about towing the Republican Party line. She's just nothing more than another hack. She's not a free thinker. She's been blue-pilled by religion and Republican Party propaganda. And it's really sad that people like this are currently getting huge platforms. It's sad because they're lying and they're spreading misinformation and making Americans dumber.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.